Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and today we're taking a look at this week's official prices. This video is sponsored by CMO Games. More on that later. Alright, so here we've got this week's official prices, and I'm not gonna lie, I am absolutely furious because exactly what I was expecting is exactly what played out. So if you're not familiar with the situation with Warcry, they tried out seasons last year, and it basically fell completely on its face. They made a starter box. It was $230, and then they made 3 expansion boxes, one every quarter, and the expansion boxes were $185 a piece. Unfortunately, the seasons did not work out well. The terrain was extremely redundant, and by the end of the season, everyone was just exhausted. To tell you the truth, it's probably the worst thing that's happened to Warcry since its inception, and took the little bit of hype and excitement that had going for it and completely killed it. A lot of people blame it on the meat trees, but I think overall it was just too much, too often. So Games Workshop has reverted back to the old way that they've been doing Warcry, and in this video we're going to take a look at the actual prices and essentially how they just made Warcry substantially more expensive, which was a lot of the issue before. The overall price creep in Warcry has been insane. The redundancy and fast-paced releases last season didn't help, and I think this is a big step backwards. So starting off with the Warcry Hunter and Hunted set, both these warbands are absolutely awesome. I'm a huge fan of these, and then it's going to come with the actual cards to play the missions and everything. It's going to come with your fighter cards and ability cards for the 2 warbands, and then it comes with this one piece of terrain, the Ogre Maw Pit, and then of course the book has a bunch of like background and cool stuff in there. And this set is now priced at $130. Which really isn't that bad if you were going to pick up both warbands, because essentially the Warcry warbands are $60 a piece. So you'd be paying $120 for the 2 warbands, and then you get the book, the cards, and the Maw Pit for basically $10. So for $130 for this set, I think it's a really good deal over the individual items, and I'm definitely going to be picking this up because the models are awesome and the terrain is awesome, and of course I'm a huge Warcry fan. All right, and then we've got a few warbands releasing as well. So first we have the Warcry Kruleboyz Monsta Killaz. So this is a new Kruleboy warband. Once again, some super cool models. Definitely have a unique look to them. They still represent the Kruleboyz, but have their own little like monster hunting theme. We also have the addition of the little simians right here. Very cool. $60 for these bad boys, right in line with what we would expect. All right, and then next for Warcry, we have the Vulkyn Flameseekers. And I've got to say right off the bat, these models are absolutely awesome. The Fyreslayer range is cool, but like severely outdated. They've put out a couple of new characters recently, and they're pretty cool, pretty nice sculpts and everything. But this warband, the design and quality of models just absolutely blows anything the Fyreslayers have out of the water. These guys are absolutely awesome, completely loaded with detail. They've got male and female sculpts. We've got the Magma Dog. I mean, this is just awesome. $60 for these guys, and definitely a huge fan, and really shows the potential for what could be coming down the line for Fyreslayers. All right, and then next we have the Ravaged Lands Scales of Talaxis. So this is the new terrain set, and exactly what I predicted was going to happen is playing out in real time. So this terrain set is being priced at $112, which is right in line with what they have previously released the terrain sets for, once they did them individually, like after it was removed from the box set. So no surprises here at $112. And honestly, it's pretty nice terrain. It looks like it's pretty cool. It has some ruins to it. It still has some of the bamboo incorporated in it. So I think it's going to go really well with the terrain we have from last season. And of course, it's going to go super cool with the Ogre Maw Pit as well. And I'm definitely going to be picking this up. Unfortunately, this is really just overall a bad situation. We talked about some of the issues as to why Warcry is basically undergoing these changes. The introduction of seasons was basically just way too much product, way too often. A lot of people got exhaustion with the hobby, with all the terrain, with all the warbands. And by like the 2nd or 3rd box, they weren't even buying them anymore because they still had the last couple boxes they were either working on or hadn't even cracked open yet. The meat trees, the terrain in the set was extremely redundant, and by the end of the season, it really felt like we were promised a bunch of ruins, and basically Games Workshop never delivered. And as if those actual issues weren't enough already, Games Workshop had recently increased the prices as we were going into the new seasons. So previously, Warcry was like $200 for a starter set and about like $160, $170 for like the expansions. And they would come out every like 6 months or so. There was no like real schedule with them or anything. When they changed over to the seasons, they raised the starter set price to $230, and then the expansions became $185. So we already saw about like a 10 to 15% increase in the prices. So the best thing that we could compare essentially what we're looking at here to is the old expansions. And the main difference being that all of the main content was the same: 2 warbands, a terrain set, the book, the cards, all that stuff. But the starter set would include the Warcry dice, the Warcry token sheet, and then also the Warcry rulebook. So those 3 items, the dice, the rulebook, and the token sheet, are not included in any of this. So this would be essentially the equivalence of an expansion set, which those expansion sets, the old price, were $185 each. So the new price now, if we take this set right here, $112, and then we take the 2 warbands, the cards, the book, all that at $130, that comes out to $242. So if the old price would have been $185, if they would have just put this in one big box like they did all last season, and the new price is $242, that means we see a dollar price increase of $57. So you're basically paying an extra $57 to get the same stuff because it's not coming in one big box anymore. Now it's coming in 2 boxes. And if we look at the percent price increase, that is a 32% price increase. So if you wanted to pick up the same essentially expansion boxes from last season, but they were basically broken down and sold with this new price model, Warcry literally just got 32% more expensive. So this was my prediction of exactly what I was afraid was going to happen. And of course it has manifested. Now there's multiple ways we can look at this. Obviously from Games Workshop's perspective, Seasons just wasn't working. You could blame it on the prices. You could blame it on the meat trees. You could blame it on the frequency of releases. And it's probably a combination of all 3 of those things. But the facts of the matter were, it was not working. So we expected some kind of change. And this is essentially what I figured they would do. Just go back to doing what they used to do. So they used to have these terrain sets, but back then these sets were priced at like $60. And then after the price increase went up to like $85. And then this past year, Games Workshop raised them up to $112. So in the last couple of years, these terrain sets have doubled in price. And it's the same thing with a lot of Games Workshop stuff. But the problem is, I love Warcry. It's just not that popular of a game. It's a skirmish game, which is less popular, and it takes place in the Age of Sigmar realm. So again, much less popular than something like 40K. So while I do like that they have smaller boxes that are more approachable for people, it's a lot easier for people to drop like $100 on a set than it is to drop $185 or $200. But Games Workshop breaking down the big box, and I do assume that this stuff was already like being produced and expected to go in one big box, and then Games Workshop had to pull the plug, rebox this stuff, because they couldn't just keep losing money like they were on the last season. But it just feels really unfortunate because for those of us that are like loyal fans of Warcry, those of us that have collected all the releases and enjoy it, or even new people looking to get into the game, the fact of the matter is, regardless of the reasons, this has manifested in a substantial price increase to the actual game itself and to people looking to play it. Now a quick message from today's sponsor. CMO Games has been selling Games Workshop products online for over 20 years. They carry the full line of Games Workshop products, including Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar, Necromunda, Bloodbowl, paint tools, and more. Almost all Games Workshop products are priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games takes pre-orders for most Games Workshop products released at their earliest date possible. 12:01 a.m. on Saturday, they go live. Most of these pre-order products are also priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games offer free shipping in the US 48 with an order of $50 or more. Their customer service is top-notch and they ship most orders within 24 hours. Visit CMOGames.com using the affiliate link in the description and let them know that you heard about CMO Games from Warhammer Man. Now back to the video. And I know it's not Games Workshop's intent to make the game like less approachable or less fun, but the fact of the matter is, it really feels like we're being punished for Warcry not doing well. And if there's one thing I've noticed when it comes to like these side games and stuff like that, once they start to trend down, it's very, very hard for them ever to recover. So I don't know what the rest of this year or this season is going to look like for Warcry, but the starter set that came out recently was extremely overpriced, didn't even have full warbands in it, and it was a complete disaster. And now the breaking down of the big boxes and repricing them at like 32% higher is just another slap in the face from Games Workshop. I absolutely love Warcry, and the last thing I want to do is see the game die. But between the pricing, the redundancy, and just one poor decision after another, it's very clear that what's going on with Warcry is trending in the wrong direction. So I don't expect Games Workshop to pull the plug on this anytime soon, but I can't help but feel like we're being punished for the poor performance of Warcry. And more likely than not, with these changes coming, if I had to make a prediction, it's that Warcry is going to keep trending in the wrong direction. So that being said, this isn't really a surprise, but very disappointing nonetheless. So we do have a couple of books this week on the prices as well. Realmseeker, Legend of the Doomseeker. And this one is coming in hardback for $35. And these hardback novels do tend to sell out relatively quickly. So if you're after this one, I wouldn't mess around. And then we also have the Once a Killer anthology. And this one is a paperback for $17.99. So very excited for Hunter and Hunted, and definitely looking forward to the Talaxis terrain set as well. But very disappointed in the massive price increase that is resulting from the breaking up of the big box. I understand not everybody wanted to buy those big boxes. Maybe they weren't after both Warbands or all the terrain. But Games Workshop removing the option and individually packaging the two sets is just going to end up costing us more money for the same stuff. So in my opinion, it's a net negative, and I really don't feel like Games Workshop even understands why Warcry is performing so poorly. So let me know what you think down below of these changes. Obviously, the last thing I want them to do is stop making content for Warcry. I love the Warbands. I love the terrain. And it's obvious that what they were doing last year, this whole seasons model, just did not work. But I can't help but think that a lot of it had to do with the redundancy of the meat trees, the very frequent releases of one big box every quarter, and then just all around the prices have gone through the roof on what used to be a pretty cheap game to get into. So I'm happy to see Games Workshop adapting, but they're basically just going back to what they used to do before. And I'm not sure if we're going to get less redundancy. I'm not sure if we're going to get less often releases. And obviously we see from the new pricing model that the game is only going to get more expensive. So maybe they fix one issue, but it seems like they're just compounding on the other ones. Let me know what you think down below. Are you a collector of Warcry? Were you thinking about getting into the game? Does this affect you in any other way? Always like to hear back from you guys in the comments. Special thanks to CMO Games for sponsoring the video. Check them out to save 15% on Games Workshop products. Link in the description. That's it for today. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man. I want Games Workshop and the games I enjoy to do well so that we get more of them. And I'm just not sure that this is the correct solution. And I'm out of here.